That's why I ended up rating it 3 stars. It's not terrible, but it's not amazing either. Maybe if you were like very new to what mindfulness is or to what happiness is, some of you bitches don't even know what happiness is, so maybe you do need to read it. For this video, I'm gonna attempt to combine the mid-year freakout tag along with my July wrap-up. I know by the time I post this, it'll be like in the middle of August, but I have been tagged a couple of times in a mid-year freakout tag, so I'm gonna answer the questions. I just don't think that they're entertaining enough to warrant an entire video, which is why I'm combining it with my July wrap-up. Let's start with the first question. Best book you've read so far in 2019. I actually had a few 5-star reads this past half year. It was between Educated by Tara Westover, The Boat SBS, which is an interactive graphic novel, and most recently, An Enchantment of Ravens. The Boat SBS is fantastic in terms of the design and craft, but in terms of an actual book, I would have to go with Educated by Tara Westover. This is a memoir that is written by a woman who grew up in a survivalist family living in the mountains. She never went to school when she was a kid because her parents don't believe in education or modern medicine. And it wasn't until she grew up later when she was like, wait a minute, bitches be crazy. And so she ended up going to Harvard and then later Cambridge. And it's basically a story about her reinventing herself and estranging herself from her family, as well as dealing with both the physical and emotional abuse that her parents have made the children go through. Coming from my background, I am also estranged from my family, and even though my childhood wasn't as fucking crazy as hers, the sentiments of kind of reinventing yourself and moving away from the bubble of your family and where you come from resonated with me in that aspect, and I just really came to admire this author. I started looking up her videos and hearing her talk after I finished the book, and even while I was reading the book too, and I just admire her so much. I think that she is a great role model. The best sequel you've read so far in 2019. The only sequel I've read this year is A Court of Mist and Fury, so technically it is the best sequel I've read, but it's also the worst sequel I've read. Number 3, a new release you haven't read yet but want to. That would be Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson, because I recently finished An Enchantment of Ravens about a month or 2 ago. I loved it. It was just fluffy, sweet cuteness, and I've heard that Sorcery of Thorns is pretty much the same thing, just a lot longer. It was released a few months ago, but obviously my library hasn't had the time to purchase it in stock. Fortunately, Simon Teen reached out to me and said, hey, if you are looking for any books from us, just give us a heads up and we'll send them to you. And I was like, wow, that's a really weird way of saying you're my bookish sugar daddy, but okay. And again, I don't really care about owning books, but I felt like it was fitting to request this one because I've heard so many good things about it. And by the time I'm done with it, I do plan on giving it away. Maybe if we end up doing like a paper cut live show about this book, this can be one of the prizes to give away to anyone who watches the live shows. So I kind of felt like it was a win-win where I could read the book early on and then I could give it to somebody else who likes owning books. But to sum up, I am really excited to read this book because I've heard that it's fucking cute. And Elias called me like one night and we were talking till 2 a.m. and he was like, bitch, you need to read this book. He literally said that Nathaniel, who I assume is the main guy in the book, is so fucking hot that he wants him to bang him. So I think that's a pretty strong contender for why I should read this book, at least just to satisfy my curiosity about why Elias is so thirsty after this guy. Number 4, most anticipated release for the second half of the year. That would be Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. I believe that comes out on October 8th. I'm trying to figure out how I can get my hands on it because I have it requested from my library, but it will obviously take several weeks before it's available for me to borrow. I just don't know if I'll be able to get it in time, and I'm too much of a cheap ass to buy the book. Leigh Bardugo already is chilling with all her money, so she does not need any more coins from me. I'll just suck it up and wait for it a little bit. Number 5, biggest disappointment. I think most recently it would be How to Date Men When You Hate Men. I chose this book to read for the Buzzworthathon because it's been on my TBR for a while, and then I ended up failing the buzzwordathon because it was just so terrible to read. And I was genuinely very excited to read it as well because judging by the title, it seemed like my kind of jam. But unfortunately, it was not. I did a whole rant review about it in the month of June. I won't bother rehashing it, but the general sentiment that I had was that it was very, very trite and pointless and just not funny or cute or quirky or whatever the hell the author was trying to go for. And she does not actually hate men like the title makes it seem out to be. She has the opposite problem where she is so obsessed with men that she'll literally make spreadsheets about all her crushes and just a bunch of inane bullshit that I know she thought it was quirky or cute or whatever, but I just thought was fucking stupid. And so it was a very big disappointment for me. Number 6, biggest surprise. The most recent example I can think of for that would be Enchantment of Ravens. This was another book that I talked about in my June wrap up. I expected to like the book. You know, I knew that it was going to be a fluffy, short, and light read, but I expected it to be 3 or 4 stars at most. And what I did not expect was for me to end up rating it 5 stars. I don't know why. I just thought it was super fucking cute and I was all about it. So I just went ahead and rated it 5 stars because why not? I knew that the author was not intending to create an amazing epic fantasy story. She was just intending to create a simple fairy tale romance, and I thought that she did a good job on it, so why not give it 5 stars? I don't know. I think my ratings are just all over the place and just dependent on my mood. But I guess that would be the biggest surprise because it was much higher than I anticipated. Number 7, favorite new author. I don't really have a favorite author in general, but I do think that the closest answer I could give to that from what I've discovered this year is River Solomon, because back in February, I read their book, An Unkindness of Ghosts, which is a sci-fi book about an autistic main character who is trapped on a spaceship, and that spaceship is basically a whole metaphor for the antebellum South. The hierarchy of the people who live in a spaceship mimics the slavery that Black people have faced. And what was really interesting about that book was that it also dived into gender. Like, for example, people in the lower caste are assigned a gender, so even if they know deep down that they are a specific gender, it doesn't matter because their pronouns would be misused as an act of violence and disrespect towards them. And I thought that this was such an interesting modern take on the sci-fi genre because it parallels so many of the issues that we face in society. I think that the author takes a lot of their own transgender experience and racial experiences and puts it in the setting of a sci-fi genre. This was the debut novel from them. I enjoyed it. I think that there were a few things that they could improve upon, like pacing, but it still didn't hinder me from wanting to read more of their work. And I think their next upcoming work is about Black mermaids, and I am all for that. Especially with the new live action movie coming up, I love that there is a surgence of just more modern faces to classic genres or fairy tales that we know. I'm definitely keeping an eye out for this author, and I think that they are really fucking smart based on the writing that I've read from them, and I think their work can only improve from there. Number 8, newest fictional crush. I do not have any fictional crushes in general. I'm just not about that life. I mean, I'm already kind of a loser by starting a booktube channel in the first place. I don't want to get in too deep with crushes and all that shit too. I'm gonna change this question a little bit to be the newest fictional ship, because even though I don't have crushes, I love just shipping characters in general. Based on this year, my favorite ship that I've read so far has been Nikolai and Zoya from King of Scars. This was totally unexpected for me because I remember reading the Glacier trilogy and I don't think those two characters even interacted at all. And now you really get to see them interact and develop this relationship in King of Scars, and you're like, wait a fucking minute, there's something going on here. It's called chemistry. I thought the relationship was very well written in King of Scars. It was one of my favorite parts to read about in that book. The way that they support each other and trust each other, and the fact that they're both insanely good looking. just makes it the perfect match. Number 9, newest favorite character. There weren't really any characters that I've read from the books this year that have really stood out to me. I think the closest answer I can give to that is Nina Zenik, even though I did read her character last year in the Six of Crows duology. I feel like she really stood out this year in the King of Scars spinoff. She goes through a lot of shit in King of Scars, and I think I've just come to appreciate her strength and her endurance and the level of maturity that she develops throughout the book as she faces all the new trauma and other kinds of bullshit in her story arc. She was still a great character in the Six of Crows duology, but I do think that character revolved mostly around her romance with Matthias, and it was nice to see her story like as it is as an individual in King of Scars, and it made me come to appreciate her outside of shipping her with another character. I saw her as finally her own individual. Number 10, book that made you cry. There isn't a book that has made me fully cry, but I think the closest to that would be tearing up a little bit at Educated. Again, I think that the writing is very heartfelt and you could feel the author's desire to be accepted by her family, but also know that it's best for herself to distance herself from her family too. I didn't cry necessarily, but I was moved by her story and the fact that it is not fictional, but based on a true story of her life is what makes it more, I guess, emotionally poignant for me. Number 11, book that made you happy. I am choosing How to Make Friends with a Ghost. This is a picture book that I read in New York when I was hanging out with Nikki and Jocelyn. It's a very cute picture book, very wholesome and sweet, just like Nikki, who I read it with. She was crying from how cute the ghosts were. So this book just gives me a positive memory. Number 12, most beautiful book you've bought so far this year. I don't buy books. Let's start with that. I'm gonna change this answer to be the most beautiful book that I've received this year, and that would be, thanks to Simon Teen, The Weight of Our Sky by Hannah Alcoff. Again, they told me that if I had any books from them that I would be interested in receiving, to just let them know. And so I took a look at their catalog and I saw that there was an Asian author who wrote The Weight of Our Sky, and I felt like this would be a good book to give away for the Asian readathon. So I'm just thinking ahead of time. Any book that I choose to receive for free, I really just use it for a giveaway. It's not for me to keep. I've also heard good things about it from last year's Asian readathon too. So I think I will end up reading this when May comes around, and then by the end of the month, I will give it away for anybody participating in the Asian readathon. Last question, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? Ninth House, Sorcery of Thorns, this book as well, and The Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein. I've been really itching to read that, and I plan on reading it, I guess, next week as of filming this. And as always, I will update this channel every time I read a book and do a little wrap up of my impressions of all of these books as well. Which brings me to the next segment of this video, which is a June wrap up of all of the books that I've read. Honestly, I don't really have much to say about them, which is why I kind of wanted to just combine it to the mid-year freakout tag, because quantity over quality, I guess. I mean, that's BookTube in a nutshell, right? The first book that I read in June is A Court of Mist and Fury. By the time I post this, I believe my book review will be a separate video that has already been posted, so you can hear all of my thoughts there. I'm not gonna bother rehashing it, but basically this book was 600 pages long and it was a slog to get through. I absolutely hated this reading experience. I think next to How to Date Men When You Hate Men, this is a close contender for a very, very unenjoyable reading experience. There was nothing I liked about it. I didn't care for the characters. I didn't care for the writing. I just don't have anything good to say about it. If you want to hear my stupid jokes about what happens in the book and more details about it, you can watch the review video, but I'm not gonna bother going into it. Really, the only thing that I can say that I didn't say in my review video is that there was a quote that I flagged. This is a book where Feyre is trying to show how much of a badass bitch she is now. Okay, she basically has more agency in this book, and the author really wants you to know that because it keeps on being emphasized over and over. And there's this one particular scene where she says, I can eat, drink, fuck, and fight just as well as I did before. Better even. Eat, drink, fuck, and fight. Why did I read 600 pages when I could have just read this one sentence alone and that would have been the entire book? Moving on, the next book that I read is Make Time by Jake Knapp and Jake Sarowski, I think is his last name. I can't check because the book is actually not with me. I ended up giving the book to my coworker to borrow. I really enjoyed it. I ended up giving it 4 stars. It's a self-help book by 2 people who used to work at Google who felt like they were indulging too much in busy culture and being a workaholic. And in this book, they provide ways to make time for yourself and reprioritize the things that you want to work on rather than react to other forces that demand time from you. This is a very well-suited book for me because I've been very stressed out at work lately and I've had trouble making my own time for myself. As you know, I am currently working on a couple of Google projects, and for me to read these 2 designers at Google who went through all the work and are now at a place where they have left that company and are doing things that they actually want to do is the kind of mindset that I want to fucking achieve. So I'm trying to get to that spot, and I just really enjoy the framework that they have put together for how you can make time for your own things. I am not rating it 5 stars because I don't necessarily think that it's life-changing or it provides me any new advice necessarily, but it's still a solid reminder to come back to the things that matter most to me. After that, I read 2 Harvard Business Review books. One of them is Happiness and then the other is Mindfulness. I do not have that with me because I actually loaned that out to another coworker, but this comes from a box set called Emotional Intelligence, and it's based on a series of studies and research in the Harvard Business Review about how increasing your emotional intelligence can benefit you in the workplace. And so it's divided by certain areas like mindfulness and then happiness. These were very quick reads for me, but I rated them both 3 stars because I think the fact that this is basically a compilation of essays that are very short makes the book overall very surface level. It doesn't go as in-depth, and to be honest, I don't even remember any takeaways that come from happiness or mindfulness. That's why I ended up rating it 3 stars. It's not terrible, but it's not amazing either. Maybe if you were like very new to what mindfulness is or to what happiness is, some of you bitches don't even know what happiness is, so maybe you do need to read it. Maybe this could be like a book to kind of introduce you to it, but for me, I just thought it was okay. After that, I read Unwind by Neil Shusterman, which is the book that I chose for the Paper Cut Book Club. By the time I post this video, the live show for Unwind would have already happened with Kat and Jordan and Emma. I'm sure we'll go much deeper into there than whatever I'm about to say for the next minute or 2. I mean, I rated this 3 stars. I question whether I should have chosen this book. I wanted to choose it because I felt like it would be relevant to our political climate today with a lot of the abortion laws in the US changing. The whole basis of this book is that a long time ago, there was a civil war between pro-choice and pro-life. In the end, they reached a compromise where parents will have to keep their kids, but they will have a choice to unwind the kids before they turn 18. Unwinding in the sense means that their organs and their body parts will be used for other things, like donated to another person who really needs it. I thought that the premise and the concept is really interesting. Unfortunately, I don't think that it went as in-depth as I would like it to be, and I am kind of confused about what exactly Neil Shusterman was trying to achieve through this book and the messages that he was trying to convey. To me, it felt like he was straddling the line between pro-choice and pro-life without taking a true stance on it. I am also considering the fact that maybe he wasn't intending to create any arguments for those 2 sides. Maybe the other points that he's trying to make is the value of life in general. And if that is the case, I still think it's pretty weak. Whatever it wasn't clear or well done enough. The world building just was lacking a lot. There was not enough for me to believe that this society could even formulate in the first place and that both sides were somehow happy with this decision. I would have loved to learn more about why unwinding is such a viable option for both sides. All in all, I think that if you are writing a dystopian novel, in order for it to be of quality, we need to figure out, how did this war even happen? How does the system work? And how this government even came to be? I think we need that context in order for it to be believable. I do know that this was a popular book and tons of people loved it and thought that it was deep as fuck. But for me, I just wasn't really feeling it. And I think that's because in general, I feel like Neil Shusterman is stronger with coming up with really cool creative concepts, but not so much with the execution of it. For what it's worth though, I did like the romance here better than I did in Scythe. The romance in Scythe fucking sucked. But then this one, you know, at least it was kind of cute. You know, it kind of made sense. They were like closer together because of the shared trauma that they had. And it wasn't as annoying as it was in Scythe. So I'll give him that. After that, the next book that I read is Digital Minimalism, Choosing a Focused Life in a Noisy World. This book was a good read that would go hand in hand with make time and just my headspace in general, because I'm trying to not be attentive to social media and to my phone in general. What I have found from this nighttime routine that I've been trying to enforce lately is that I actually feel a lot better when I take some time to just physically put my phone away. And what I found from reading this book is that the author has helped define why I like doing this. When you decide to put your phone away and not just check social media by habit, you are reserving time for yourself to be more purposeful with what you decide to do in your day-to-day life. I really enjoyed the way that the author emphasized on being more deliberate with how we spend our time. I did like some of his advice as well. There was one where he suggested having conversational office hours, which is where for most of the day, you focus on things that you gotta do. But obviously there's always gonna be other people who need your time and attention to bring up certain points. And this is where having office hours, where you have an open door policy and people can come in and tell you whatever they gotta tell you, is helpful because then it's actually scheduled in advance. I would personally love to hold office hours for that in terms of social media, where I do like to be respondent to comments on YouTube or replies on Instagram or whatever, but it would not be productive for me to constantly reply whenever I get a message. It would be nice for me instead to actually dedicate a specific amount of time to do that. I rated it 3.5 stars because I did like some of the advice that he gave. The reason why it doesn't quite jump up to 4 stars for me is because I felt like by the time I reached the middle part of it, there was just unnecessary fluff or anecdotes that I felt like were not fitting for this book. He brings up random shit like the championship for the rock, paper, scissors tournaments, which I guess is like a thing, and fantasy board game groups, and just other random shit that was brought up because he was trying to make a point about human psychology. He also brought up some anecdotes from old white dudes like Henry David Thoreau for how they lived their lives before there was technology. I just didn't think those examples or anecdotes were very effective. What would have better helped is if he provided actual research and statistics, or at the very least, if he's gonna provide anecdotes, he should be taking modern day examples of people who are forced to be ingrained into technology and social media, like people who are working in Silicon Valley or people who work as social media managers. How are they able to balance their personal lives with the demands of technology? After that, the reading rush happened, and the first book that I read for that is Fruits Basket. This is the first volume of the collector's edition, and this fulfills the challenge of reading a book that has a non-human main character, as well as reading a book that has a TV or movie adaptation, because the reboot is currently happening. I read this thick girl right here, but she was a very quick read. I think it only took me 2 days. I thought it was cute and sweet, but I do think that having watched the reboot of the anime, I would say that the anime actually does a better job in terms of having a more palatable art style, because if you look at the pages here, their eyes are fucking ginormous, and it's like, too much for me. At least the anime kind of tones it down. I also think what the anime does better is that there's just better pacing throughout the story. When I read the chapters here, a lot of it feels rushed. I rated it 3 stars because I don't think it's terrible, but I don't think it's like amazing either. I do think that the anime was able to improve it a lot. And I'm talking about both renditions of the anime as well. I still think 2001 is superior. After that, I read Proposals for the Feminine Economy. This book fulfills the challenge of reading a debut novel by an author, and I saw that this author has not written any other book besides this one. And this is also a very short read, so I basically read it in one night. I surprisingly really liked it, which is weird because usually I rate books like these 3 stars when I don't feel like they are providing enough solid examples to follow through. It's not going to give you any hard-hitting economic strategies. Honestly, all it is just a very light manifesto, but I really enjoyed it, and maybe I had just read it at a good time when I was feeling very stressed from work. I really appreciated the way that this book emphasized on creating a new economy that embodies our values. And so that's why I'm rating it 4 stars, because I actually felt inspired by it. And if anything, I felt comforted by it as well, because it was like a reminder that we don't have to adhere to masculine distributions of power, and instead we can redefine business and economy to create and adapt things that are based on our values rather than what society has told us. That was very comforting to me because I have been dealing with a hectic work week, and it's nice to know that it doesn't have to be this way. When we feel bad about ourselves when it comes to our place in our society or in our economy, it's almost comforting to take a step back and challenge the values that they have been implementing and then aim to try to forge a new path based on your own values. So I really enjoyed it. 4 stars for me. And then the last book that I read that fulfills all the other challenges for a reading rush is Singletasking, which is a nonfiction book that tells you how to get more done one thing at a time. This is a book that I felt like would be very relevant to me right now because I often fall into the trap of being too busy, and whenever I feel like I'm too busy, I compensate for that by multitasking. I'm trying to read this book as a reminder to slow down and be more purposeful and deliberate with the way that I work. I'm actually only halfway through with it. I just want to film this video and get it out of the way first. What I can say is that based on the pages that I have read so far, it's looking more like a 3-star read for me. The author is trying to convey how important it is to single task, and sometimes he brings up research and statistics or whatever, but I think that he's pulled it from very specific scenarios just to fit what he's trying to convey. For example, he's pulling in statistics for how people get into car accidents when they text and drive at the same time. So obviously that is an example for how you should focus on one thing at a time, but just because those accidents happen doesn't mean that I should only do one thing at a time when I'm working. Instead of pulling those specific statistics from other scenarios, I would be more interested in reading research about single tasking versus multitasking within the workplace. And so far, I don't think there is anything solid that backs his points up other than just simply his point of view and his opinion. So we'll see. Again, I'm only halfway through the book. And so that is pretty much all of the books that I have read in the month of June. Oh my God, I just realized that it's not even fucking June, it's July. What is time? I have like no concept of time. Apparently it is July and next month is August. Cool. As always, I will update my impressions of these books when I finish reading them. Hi there, I'm popping in to give a few updates. I ended up finishing Singletasking, I think on Wednesday of the reading rush week, so I was pretty much done with the readathon right away, which is a luxury compared to all of you crazy crackheads that decided to read 7 books and daily vlog it. Can't relate. I ended up bumping this book down to 2 stars because the issues that I brought up in the first take of this video were prevalent for the rest of the book. I just felt like the author was only basing her argument based on her personal beliefs rather than showing any kind of solid statistics or research that back up single tasking specifically. She talks a lot about time management and being respectful of your time and others' time, but those are things that aren't necessarily about working on one task at a time like this book proclaims it to be. So I rated it 2 stars because I do think that her arguments were weak. But the main reason why I wanted to pop in is because I owe some shout outs. Every time I hit a milestone on YouTube, meaning that I hit another 1,000 subscribers, I like to give a shout out to another booktuber who has less than 1,000 subscribers. Last time I did this, I had I think 31K. Now I have 33K, which means that I owe 2 shout outs. I am gonna shout out 2 male booktubers this time because we always need more of that. The first booktuber that I wanna shout out is Zach Tries to Read. I might be shouting him out because I feel so guilty for having put him through reading Unwind for a Paper Cut Book Club. Oh, and that's another thing that I forgot to update. The Unwind live show has happened, and I felt like it was a good discussion among the 4 of us. Not only did we talk about what kind of message the book was trying to convey, we also talked about how dystopian YA could be written better and all of the benefits that a well-written dystopian story could provide for teens. The live chat in that show was also popping off because it was very divisive. A lot of people had different opinions. Despite me not enjoying the book, I really liked hearing differing opinions about it, especially coming from people who did enjoy the book, because it helps me try to be a better reader. So if you did attend the live show, thank you for indulging in it. And if you haven't seen it yet, but you want to know in-depth thoughts that we had about the book, you can check out the live show a couple videos back from my channel. But anyway, back to the point. I wanted to shout out Zach Tries to Read, not just because I unfortunately made him read through a book that he did not enjoy at all, but in general, I really like his take on many books. And I'm gonna cite his Unwind video because I do think that it perfectly encapsulates my thoughts on the book, and he was able to articulate it in detail so much better than what I have done. And on top of that, he balances out the analytical points that he's made with humor as well. Check him out. He is fairly new-ish, but he is a super smart reader. I've enjoyed all of the videos that he's put out so far. There are some other videos where he explains why he decides to DNF books and when you should do it. He also has another video with his take on why you should maybe engage with problematic content or problematic books. The second booktuber that I want to shout out is Faye Trey, because finally he is starting to make videos on his channel. But I've known him since the beginning of when I started my channel and when he was kind of starting his channel and then he deleted all his videos and now he's starting over again. I'm hoping that by shouting out Trey, he will fucking commit to something for once in his goddamn life. Trey is great. I consider him to be my problematic fave because sometimes he has spicy opinions and people get offended by it, but because I know him personally, I know he has a good heart, so he's a white man that I will give a pass. He has a very dry sense of humor that you'll see if you watch any of his videos. I know that he does have a few entertaining ones planned in the future. I think that he's gonna post a video where he does an ASMR reading of the smut scenes from A Court of Thorns and Roses. Hopefully by the time I post this, he would have already uploaded the video. But if not, now you have more incentive to sign up so that you can anticipate. I also ended up hanging out with him when I visited Texas with Chanel, which also, I would shout out Chanel, but she has over 1,000 subscribers already, so forget about her. Just kidding, I love you. But I did get to hang out with them, so you will see them in the future as well. Those are 2 booktubers that I want to shout out. Don't forget to unsubscribe from my channel and subscribe to them instead. Goodbye.